see that they are trying to strengthen this border even more. There is a crane here. They are putting barbed razor wire across the top. There are some migrants, some would-be asylum seekers on the other side of this fence. I don't know if you can make them out because it's quite bright, but there are several here. And this is the caravan that we've been talking about, we've been hearing about in the news for several weeks. Now, there are three groups here to really mention. First of all, you've got the main caravan. This is the one that's been getting all of the media attention. Originally thought to be around 7,000 strong, now thought to be nearer to around 3,000 and about 1,000 miles away at the moment. That group is still on its way, but don't forget there's all these, what you might call splinter groups. Yesterday we had 80 LGBT would-be asylum seekers turning up at the border. We're told they were given help by non-governmental organisations, by pressure groups, to get rides, to get bus tickets, to get them nearer to the border. Also, another 250 arrived later in the day. Told also, I mean, we actually saw pictures of them climbing up onto the border. Some of them got to the top. A few of them actually got over to the border. Their feet were planted onto US soil. And here's what a few of them had to say.
We're waiting for everyone in the caravan to come, and we're going to see what solution there is now that we're right at the border of the US. And some are coming with the idea that some family members will cross the border with coyotes. Others will request asylum.
For now, we're waiting to see what solutions there might be after a while, to see if there's a possibility to enter or not. Because if there's no possibility to enter, and if we're going to run a lot of risk, then we're going to wait a while here in Tijuana.
We are told that the migrant camps on the other side of the border over there in Tijuana are absolutely packed. At the moment, there are weeks and weeks of waiting for asylum hearings. So we're told that the groups that arrived yesterday may not be heard until the end of the year. Then, of course, you've got these extra thousands, reportedly, according to the AFP news agency, 1,500 arriving today. So lots of people heading this way, the police, the army, and the government keeping a very watchful eye. Who knows what's going to happen next?
The city of Tijuana turned a sports facility into a migrant shelter for members of the Exodus, as most of them wait to apply for asylum in the US, a process that can take weeks because of backlogs at the ports of entry. The improvised shelter can fit up to 2,000 people, but the city doesn't have enough tents or staff just yet. Long lines formed outside the facility. Alison Vallecillo, a 4-year-old from Honduras, was among those waiting to get into the shelter, along with her parents. She was very clear about her ultimate destination, to the north, to the United States.
Al norte, al norte, al Estados Unidos.
After a few hours of waiting, the family got inside, where they have access to health checkups and bathrooms. Most of the other shelters are already overcrowded because of an influx of Mexicans fleeing violence in their own home states, like Michoacán and Guerrero. But even with the sports facility opening its doors, there isn't enough room for everyone in the caravan. Thousands more are still on their way. Earlier this week, hundreds set up camp in the upscale neighborhood of Playas de Tijuana. Videos on social media showed hundreds of Mexicans coming by throughout the night, telling the Central Americans to go home. They accused them of leaving trash and messing up the community. Violence broke out. Hugo Reynoso was there.
Try to help my people.
The next day, he spoke to one of the caravan migrants from Honduras, apologizing for what happened and trying to explain.
We have a bit of psychosis, a bit of fear, because we've suffered so much in the city.
Reynoso says residents are worried because homicides are at an all-time high in the city, and they fear that the caravan is too rowdy.
This is nothing about discrimination or races. It's nothing like that. It's just to give, we was trying to give our opinions to them and tell them to, relax.
The city sent buses to the neighborhood all day to transport migrants to the sports facility turned shelter. But it's unclear what's going to happen when hundreds more arrive. Jean Guerrero, KPBS News.
Well, border wall projects now have a start date on the Texas border, and construction companies are getting contracts to build. Not technically the president's border wall, but maintenance and extensions of current fencing. Tonight, our border reporter Oscar Margain explains how the projects mean that nature and religious sites will often end up in no man's land.
It's hard to say which one was my favorite because for me, my favorite bird is the one I'm looking at right now. There are two things we learned about Seattle resident Paula Crockett that really gets her going. One, of course, is nature. She's a birder. The other, well, she puts it best.
Now I'm a dissident.
Paula and a handful of bird watchers have come to the National Butterfly Center, a 100-acre property that extends to the edge of the Rio Grande, to spot rare species of animals.
I have wanted to see one of these for ages.
A wildlife center, now in the path of a border wall. Customs and Border Protection announced a construction contract for 6 miles of levee wall with bollard fencing along the current levee road that divides the Butterfly Center, and another 8 miles on the east side of the county for a total of $312 million.
Once they come in here with the bulldozers, all of this will be gone.
The center's director, Mariana Trevino Wright, has been fighting this wall project for nearly 2 years.
We're going to lose 70% of our land, and they're going to excavate this earthen levee and clear all of the vegetation for a minimum 150-foot enforcement zone.
The government has waived more than 24 environmental laws. Trevino Wright says that puts hundreds of animal species at risk.
So there is nothing in any current lawsuit that we have faith will stop the seizure of the land.
The project will affect other wildlife refuges and residential areas. It will also leave the historical 150-year-old chapel La Lomita in no man's land. The Catholic Church is seeking a restraining order on the government, citing infringement on their religious freedom. The government offering $100 for 65 acres.
And it makes me unhappy and very angry.
Paula often voices her opposition. She supports a border security plan, but one that takes these concerns into account.
Wildlife doesn't know borders. They know habitat.
At this point, there's no stopping the project, set to break ground in February. In Mission on the Texas-Mexico border, I'm Oscar Margain reporting.
All right, so some of the migrant caravan have arrived at our southern border, and now we see thousands of others also coming. The AP reporting, quote, migrant caravan groups arrived by hundreds at U.S. border. Joining us now for a debate, former chair of the Council of Economic Advisors, President Obama, Austin Goolsbee, and civil rights attorney Darryl Parks. Austin, it's so good to see you. You know why? Because I just played at the beginning of the show, I hope you were watching, a guy by the name of Barack Obama, who you love, you absolutely adore, and who I think did a horrible job. Okay, we disagree. And he sounded like Donald Trump about protecting our borders, respecting our sovereignty. What has happened from then until now?
Only good things. You know, look, Sean, you and I have been friends a long time.
Yeah.
And I will say, among Democrats, among liberals, I am totally in agreement that a country should control who comes into that country. So we should secure the border.
Well, all right, hang on.
Now,
mark this moment. That means your wonderful wife, who I have met and had dinner with, has finally had some influence on you. We're making progress.
Yes. Well, look, but here's what I'm saying. The caravan, I'm glad you're at least following up on this. The president was out trumpeting this as an invasion and the biggest threat to national security. The vast majority of the people in this caravan are still in the city of Guadalajara, which is 800, 900 miles away from the U.S. border. And
they're now
women
transportation,
escaping domestic violence in Guatemala. They're 4-year-old kids. This is not what we should be. If you're concerned about border security,
well, let me tell you why
let's
we
put
should
the
be
focus
concerned.
where it should be, not on these kids.
Darryl, let me concede. Putting aside, the 300 have been identified by both Mexican officials and Department of Homeland Security as to being bad elements that are trying to mix in with the caravan crowd of migrants. And as I watch them, and I would argue probably 99+% are good people, live in poverty, horrible lives, want what we all take for granted in this country. It's the 300 others that we have to worry about. Here's what I'm afraid of. Here's the video of what happened at the southern border in Mexico. And that is, they take the fence, they knock it down, they race across the border. For the safety and security of everybody, if this happens on our southern border, I don't want anybody hurt. All we're asking, if you want to come to this country, to do it legally. You're a lawyer. Do you respect the law?
Without question, we respect the law, Sean, and we expect that those people, once they get to the border, they're going to do the right thing. These people are, we shouldn't demonize them. They are trying to escape poverty. They're trying to escape political instability.
Did I demonize anybody?
I know you didn't, and I'm glad you did. You did. Tonight you're doing great, Sean. Thank you.
Oh,
but
tonight
I think
I'm
these
doing
people,
great.
they all
right. Just tonight, though.
You're doing great tonight. You do well all the time, but tonight you're doing great. Let me say this here. These people are looking for a better opportunity. They're looking for a better opportunity, like all of us in America. I'm sure once they get there, they'll follow the rules.
We have laws.
I don't think we need to be as concerned.
We're a constitutional republic. We have borders, sovereignty, laws, and if you really want to be here, the first prerequisite has to be obey our laws, respect our laws. Don't just take it upon yourself.
Meantime.